I tried to help Leo the cat after he got a bag stuck around his neck, but he freaked out and left me with a bleeding ear. This occurred yesterday, and today, I am confronting the aftereffects. Around 5 p.m. yesterday, my male cat Leo, who is 9 years old, began his evening burst of energy. I had left a reusable cooler bag on the floor, and he was having a great time crawling inside it and then leaping out to pounce on various toys or simply run around the room. After observing him doing this a few times, I witnessed the unavoidable happen. He managed to put his head through the loop of the carry handle, twisted it so that it wrapped around his neck, and when he zoomed out of the bag came along with him. I was too slow to get off the couch and stop him. For the next 5 minutes, he zoomed around my cluttered living room, under tables, desks, chairs, and behind the computer desk, virtually everywhere. He attempted to go to every hiding spot he had, but the loud flapping bag followed him, acting like a chaser, with something tightly bound around his neck. He crashed into walls and knocked over items, likely bruising himself and straining his joints or muscles. My mistake started here as I attempted to assist him. I somewhat passively pursued him and finally managed to guide him into the bedroom, where he hid under the bed. Once he was contained, I closed the bedroom door to prevent him from escaping again and pulled the mattress away from the wall so I could climb on and reach down through the gap of the bed frame's slats to unhook the carry handle from his neck. Once more, this was a mistake, as I was looming over him and reaching into his dark safe space while he was in a state of severe panic. With him no longer moving, the bag was no longer chasing him and startling him, and by the time I was able to extend my hand toward him, he had managed to extract his head from the loop anyway. As I reached down to the bag, he started growling, hissing, and spitting, before erupting into an ear-piercing howl. I grabbed the bag and stepped off the bed, rearranging everything back to its original state. Meanwhile, he continued to scream and hiss from beneath the bed. My home features a sliding door that separates the front living area from the bedrooms and the rest of the house. So, I did what I typically do when he becomes annoying or hyperactive. I closed that door and waited for him to calm down. This time was different. He did not calm down over the following hours. Every time I checked on him, took a restroom break, put food in his bowl, or anything else, he would instantly become hyper-territorial and literally scream at me. I knew what was transpiring, as milder versions had happened previously. Cats can behave in quite peculiar ways, and one of those is how they transfer aggression. If something disturbs a cat but they cannot immediately attack the source of the agitation, they harbor an instant grudge and will hold onto the need to lash out until they find something to direct their aggression toward. In Leo's case, it's typically me. This behavior is often benign, such as when he sees a bird through the window he cannot reach at 8 a.m. while I am at work, then bites my ankle and darts away when I return from work at 7 p.m. This situation was markedly different. I have only witnessed him appear this simultaneously angry and frightened 2 other times, once when an ex-girlfriend overstayed her welcome and spooked him, and another time when I momentarily thought getting him a female cat companion would be cute and enjoyable. I assumed he was simply biased against female cats, as he had never reacted in such a manner toward me in the 8 years I had cared for this single-minded creature. Eventually, as bedtime approached, I left the sliding door slightly ajar to see if he would feel more inclined to approach me. This strategy seemed to work. He cautiously emerged from the other side of the house and joined me as I began my nightly ritual of drinking hot cocoa and watching videos on YouTube. He settled on my lap on the couch, and I gave him gentle head pats. Everything seemed to be fine. I went to bed shortly before midnight, and as usual, he skittered away when I stood up from the couch. I climbed into bed, and he joined me a bit later, curling up to sleep beside me. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of him coughing and sputtering, and eventually, he began to retch as if he was going to vomit. Instinctively, I followed my usual procedure. I gently scooped him up and placed him onto the tiles in the hallway just outside the bedroom. He didn't end up vomiting, but he shot me a dirty look before darting away into the front of the house. Since I was awake, I realized that my prostate was signaling its needs alongside my bladder. So, I rolled out of bed and spent a few fruitless minutes scrolling through Reddit while waiting for my body to decide what it was doing. After a 10-minute wait and a minimal accomplishment, I got up, flushed the toilet, and stepped out into the hallway. Leo was waiting for me and immediately launched into screaming and hissing again, crouching down with his ears pinned back, as if he was about to pounce on my legs. Acting on instinct, I yelled and waved my foot in the air above him, as this typically frightens him off. Not this time, he somehow got even louder, and after a standoff in which he increased his screams if I attempted to approach or move past him, I managed to back him into the bedroom doorway and slip into the kitchen located at the front of the house. While I took some melatonin to help me fall back asleep, he trailed me into the kitchen, continuing his territorial rage and effectively cornering me. I managed to get him to back off by gently pushing an empty Uber Eats bag with some recyclable trash toward him using my foot. He retreated back to the bedroom and under the bed. However, instead of going to the back corner against the wall, he crouched near the section closest to the door. If I tried to approach the doorway, he would scream louder and lunged out from under the bed. I backed off and closed the sliding door again, but I really needed to return to bed, as I needed rest and had to be up early the following day. I attempted to wait a little longer, and after about 10 minutes, I employed the strategy of leaving the concertina door ajar. Sure enough, he eventually came to me, and we seemed to be settled again. That was not the case. The moment I attempted to stand up and head toward the bedroom, he leaped up, blocked my path, and screamed at me, poised to attack. I found myself stuck, with my cat positioned at the center console of my recliner couch next to me, beginning to growl and hiss the moment I attempted to stand. I contemplated sleeping on the couch, but due to my sleep apnea, I generally cannot sleep well in a recliner. Desperate now, I resorted to the drastic measure I had used before when he stubbornly refused to calm down. Grab him, endure a few light scratches, and place him in the sin bin. To regain his composure, also known as the laundry room, which contains his spare water bowl and litter tray. I waited until he settled down in a loaf position, facing away from me, and then I grabbed him. This turned out to be my largest blunder. As I mentioned, he had never been this furious at me, and even when we reach a point where he attempts to bite or scratch me, it typically feels like roughhousing. As I seized him from behind, with my right hand underneath his belly to support him and hold him to my chest while his legs clutched onto my arm, and my other hand at the scruff of his neck, he went completely berserk. I managed to maintain control, but not before he somehow twisted around and made a good attempt at my face, clawing me on the side of my head instead. I managed to get him into the laundry room without sustaining significant injuries. However, even without immediate pain, I knew he had caused a decent hit to my ear, and sure enough, it was bleeding down the side of my neck. I grabbed my first aid kit, cleaned the blood, and attempted to figure out how to apply a band-aid to the back of the curved section of my ear. Fortunately, the bleeding stopped relatively quickly, and as I examined the wound with a finger, I realized it was not just a cut. My ear bore a notch, as if a small hoop earring had been pulled out from the cartilage at the top. I cleaned it up, applied a band-aid, and returned to sleep, hoping that in the 3 hours before I needed to rise, he would calm down. He did not. The morning brought the exact same ferocious energy, so I left him in the laundry room until I was prepared to leave for my first errand, letting him out just before I departed. Upon returning from my first errand, he appeared calm at first, greeting me at the door and running ahead of me as I entered as usual. However, he quickly stopped, blocking my path, and began the screaming and hissing once more. I devised a strategy at this point, using my cricket bat as a makeshift barrier while shuffling forward. He would swipe at it aggressively multiple times before retreating, allowing me to navigate the house, somewhat. I went out again for the rest of the day, attending appointments and spending a few hours at the office. While preparing lesson plans, I consulted various sources for advice on how to help him calm down and recover from what had clearly become an extremely traumatic event. Finally, around 3 p.m., I returned home through a specialized pet supply store. I purchased a diffuser that releases calming substances called Feliway, calming spray, a catnip toy, and some calming snacks that allegedly contain a natural version of benzodiazepines for cats. Upon arriving home, I maneuvered past the ball of angry orange fur with my cricket bat and into the kitchen. I unpacked the supplies, plugged in the diffuser, and began spraying the commonly used resting spots with the calming spray. Leo followed me the entire time, vocally expressing his displeasure through screaming. I had more paperwork to complete, so I grabbed one of the calming snacks and made my way to the computer desk, using the cricket bat as a shield. As I began working, he approached and responded positively when I extended my hand for him to sniff and rub against. I offered him pats and fed him from the tube of the calming snack paste. At this stage, I figured out the routine. If I was seated on the couch or at the computer, I was apparently safe. If I stood up to move around, he switched to fight or flight mode, leading me to utilize the cricket bat defensively. According to my sources, this behavior would likely resolve itself in a few days as trust was gradually rebuilt. The final test occurred with the second to last task of the day. I had scheduled an electrician to come and check a few things at around 4 p.m. When he arrived and knocked on the security screen, Leo bravely retreated without a sound to hide behind the TV cabinet. I stepped outside while the technician assessed the electric panel and simply warned him that, upon entering the house, we would probably encounter an out-of-control cat who would scream at me while I held out the cricket bat to fend him off. However, we heard nothing from Leo throughout the technician's visit, confirming that this fear-driven aggression was solely directed at me. The electrician completed his work and left shortly after. Leo re-emerged, and we resumed our pattern of cautious affection while I sat and worked, only to switch back to uncontrolled anger whenever I walked toward the bathroom. In a somewhat positive conclusion, my last errand was to collect my medication after I received a text shortly after 6 p.m. that they were ready. While waiting for my prescribed drugs that were not, in fact, available, I consulted my sources again, sharing information about the apparent understanding my cat had developed sitting near me was a safe source of comfort against his trauma, whereas my standing position represented an alarming figure that caused his distress. Someone suggested the obvious: make myself smaller and either crawl or crab walk around the house. So, upon returning home, I tried this approach. I knelt down when I entered the door as the initial greeting started to take a turn for the worse. Instantly, he calmed down. I attempted to shuffle forward on my knees, occasionally pausing to offer my hand for him to sniff whenever he stopped to issue a warning meow. This approach worked, though it was terribly uncomfortable for my knees, but I was finally able to navigate the house without facing a feral domestic short-ear yelling at me. Now that I have documented everything, I hope I do not lose the entire post since links are not permitted. Imgur album with pictures of the injuries and videos of the screaming alongside the eventual peace treaty. NSFW, blood and my notched ear. Summary: today, I made a mistake in trying to assist my cat while he was panicking after becoming entangled in a shopping bag, inadvertently transferring his fear-driven aggression to me. Story 2. Caught texting her ex after claiming he was gone, my GF's mom now bans me from seeing her holidays lost and trust shattered. How do I fix this? Yes, it is as chaotic as the title suggests. To provide some context, my girlfriend and I have been in a long-distance relationship for a year, with me residing in Chicago and her in Tampa. She comes from a very affluent family and leads a completely different lifestyle, one where everything one desires is readily available. I have previously been in 2 relationships lasting 3 years each, and the initial part of this relationship had me feeling on top of the world. I was in the best mental state of my life, my future seemed clear, and everything felt like smooth sailing until it changed. We initially met at a bar near Clearwater, where we kissed outside, only for me to discover later that she had a boyfriend at that time. Those familiar with her mentioned that they should have broken up months prior and hadn't seen each other in a long time. Perhaps this should have raised a red flag that I failed to notice. Nevertheless, we continued our conversations for a month after this encounter, and that night, while we were on a trip to Nashville with mutual friends, her boyfriend and she broke up. Fast forward another month, and we began dating. I felt uneasy about the fact that our talking phase coincided with the final month of her previous relationship and how quickly we grew close, as I wanted to ensure she was emotionally ready, which she insisted she was, claiming she had checked out mentally for months. In my previous relationships, the ex-partners often lingered or were in contact, or we shared the same friend circles, so I emphasized the necessity for her to completely cut ties with him. She assured me he was out of her life after he attempted to text her again, and I took her word for it. Fast forward once more, and while we were vacationing at one of her family's properties, a cabin in Georgia, I had a strange sensation. I briefly had her phone, accessed her Snapchat, and discovered a message from her ex dating back about a month and a half, albeit under a different name to disguise it. There were numerous exchanges and a text asking, "How long were you talking to someone else while we were together?" Additionally, I moved to her text messages and found numerous conversations discussing a recent hurricane and their plans related to it, which later transitioned into flirtatious exchanges that she did not shut down. She never mentioned these until I uncovered them myself, indicating a lack of transparency. While her responses were not overly malicious or flirty, the fact remains that she understood how much an ex would hurt me, fabricated excuses about severing ties, and chose to act contrary to my feelings with each message. I recall the first time I asked her to remove him from her Instagram, and there was resistance then as well. Ultimately, her rationale for keeping him on social media was that she never achieved closure and expressed how she felt trapped by his controlling behavior and toxicity. When I inquired as to why she remained with him during our early conversations, she claimed she was trapped, believing he would change, but he did not. She hadn't seen him for the last 3 months of their relationship. Regardless, I had placed my trust in her, only to feel utterly betrayed. I believed I had found an ideal partner who loved me and had nothing to hide, only for it to come to light that she was concealing details that could devastate me. Her mother and sister were also present on that trip and recognized my change in demeanor, sensing my sadness and lack of energy. Months before this incident, I had made it abundantly clear that such actions were most damaging to me due to my psychological trauma, yet she proceeded regardless. In the months that followed, my trust severely declined, and I am honest enough to admit that I exhibited some controlling behaviors as well. Her mother expressed frustration over how my girlfriend was so despondent for about a month following these events, blaming me for her feelings and insisting that I should have moved on by then. Notably, her mother is friends with one of her ex-boyfriend's mothers and frequently visits her home. My girlfriend and I agreed she would avoid that particular ex's mother, yet I caught her in another deception when she ended up there after claiming she was elsewhere. She argued that her mother forced her, and when she tried to explain her discomfort, her mother accused her of being manipulated by me. Shortly thereafter, her mother developed a pattern of using my girlfriend's iPad to read our messages, getting upset over certain remarks I made, such as questioning why her mother couldn't allow her to live her own life as a soon-to-be 23-year-old. Her mother believes I don't trust my girlfriend when she goes out and views me as overly controlling, simply because my girlfriend had been in a miserable state for nearly 2 months. I won't deny that I lost a lot of trust, but for good reason, and I made that very clear. While I've matured enough to admit that I sometimes questioned or pressured her out of my insecurities stemming from this relationship and my past, I still feel it is unfair to cast me as the villain in this situation when I am, in fact, the victim. I recognize that my controlling tendencies after the incident were overreactions, but they were reactions nonetheless. Despite everything, my girlfriend has been incredibly hard on herself over this, and I am no stranger to infidelity, deeply understanding how remorseful she felt. It's evident she wasn't fully healed. Another critical point is that she offered me both her Instagram and Snapchat passwords, which I chose not to use. Nevertheless, her mother saw those conversations on her phone, confidently accusing me of having requested them, which I did not. One aspect I haven't yet mentioned is that before the infidelity occurred, my relationship with her mother was excellent. I know that sounds unbelievable. I spoke with her mother over FaceTime occasionally. She was always thrilled to converse with me while my girlfriend and I talked, and she had initially shown strong support for our relationship. However, all of this shifted when I was betrayed, and her mother seemed to believe that I was taking too long to recover, and that I needed to regain some stability, blaming me for her daughter's unhappiness. Frankly, I simply cannot recover this quickly, and I wish it didn't render me the bad guy. The past few months have been excruciating, as whenever my girlfriend attempts to defend me or expresses her intention to see me, her mother reacts with anger and hostility toward her. Recently, the 2 months have passed without a chance to see her. Her mother canceled my visit for Christmas, despite my $600 flight, and also shut down my visit for New Year's. Now, she is blocking my plan for Valentine's Day, for which I have also invested significant resources and already booked a flight. My girlfriend and I have made substantial progress toward forgiveness and have become healthier, both committed to working on rebuilding trust. However, the barrier remains her mother. It is immensely challenging to maintain a relationship when one is banned from seeing their partner due to the interference of a parent. As Valentine's Day approaches, my anxiety increases. I have already purchased my flight and am contemplating going anyway, since the payment has already been made. Perhaps staying somewhere else and hoping to see her, albeit briefly, could be an option. I wonder if escaping the cold, whether in Chicago, might help provide some much-needed solitude. I do not know. If another visit were to be blocked, I am uncertain how much longer I could endure being unable to see her. How could I possibly win approval and acceptance from someone so stubborn and dismissive of me? How can I envision a future if there is a chance she never softens her stance? What further efforts can I undertake to salvage this? It is disheartening to know that we could have experienced joy and happiness had it not been for her actions. Unfortunately, I now find myself cast in the role of the antagonist. Summary: my girlfriend lied about severing ties with her ex, and I caught her exchanging texts and some Snapchat memories. She felt immense guilt for months, while I lost significant trust, resulting in insecurities and controlling behavior. Her mother grew upset with my girlfriend's prolonged sadness and directed her frustration toward me. I expressed discomfort about my girlfriend visiting another ex's mother, and her mother would go through my girlfriend's phone while she slept to find reasons to dislike me. Although my girlfriend and I have improved significantly, we have not seen each other since early December due to her mother's restrictions. We missed significant holidays, and I am unsure what steps to take now. Thank you for any insights. I am struggling immensely and needed to share my thoughts. My apologies for the lengthy message. I'm open to any questions,